Good morning, it's 10 a.m. You're watching Rajya Sabha television. This is the breakfast news with me, Frank Pereira. Here are the headlines. Post-Brexit protests in UK, hundreds hold pro-migrant and pro-European Union demonstrations in central London and Scotland. Day after the vote, UK braces for the fallout of the Brexit vote. Fears of austerity and spectre of a second Scottish independence referendum loom large. CBI files 4 new charge sheets in the Vyapam scam. Over 2,000 people arrested in connection with the scam in Madhya Pradesh. And monsoon advances in many parts of the country. Many parts of Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal receive heavy rains. Well, hundreds of pro-migrant and pro-European Union protesters held demonstrations in central London and outside the Scottish Parliament on Friday. The protests came soon after 52% UK voters opted to leave the EU. The issue of immigration was central to the campaign. The Leave EU voters said that Britain had to quit to reduce numbers of migrants coming into the United Kingdom, and Scotland had voted to stay by 62 to 38% in the EU. Its ruling pro-independence party, the Scottish National Party, is constantly at odds with Prime Minister David Cameron's Conservatives. There is also speculation of a second Scottish independence referendum that raises prospects of the United Kingdom tearing itself apart after voting to leave the European Union. A vote for independence would end the 300-year-old union between Scotland and England. Meanwhile, Britain confronts a political crisis after the historic referendum that rejected the advice of main Westminster party leaders and instead took a plunge into the political unknown. British Prime Minister David Cameron has said he will step down within 3 months.
It's a victory for ordinary people, decent people.
I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
In a historic referendum, UK voted to leave the European Union. The official results showed the Leave campaign winning with 51.5% of the vote. The referendum saw more than 30 million people voting with a turnout of about 72%, the highest at a UK-wide vote since 1992. Following the results, British Prime Minister David Cameron said he will step down. Cameron had been strongly advocating for the Remain campaign and had urged his countrymen to stay in the European Union.
But the British people have made a very clear decision to take a different path. And as such, I think the country requires fresh leadership to take it in this direction. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination. This is not a decision I've taken lightly, but I do believe it's in the national interest to have a period of stability and then the new leadership required.
However, there was celebration in the Leave camp. UK Independence Party leader Nigel Farage, who has campaigned for the past 20 years for Britain to leave the EU, hailed the result as the UK's Independence Day.
It's a victory for ordinary people, decent people. It's a victory against the big merchant banks, against the big businesses and against big politics. We now need a Brexit government, a government that gets on with the job, a government that begins the renegotiation of our trade relationship.
Britain, which joined the then European Economic Community in 1973, has always been an ambivalent member, but after Thursday's referendum, it has become the first country to leave the EU since its formation. However, the Leave vote does not immediately mean Britain ceases to be a member of the 28-nation bloc, as the process could take a minimum of 2 years. The referendum result has shocked many world powers which had been hoping for Britain to stay with the EU. The former imperial power has now set itself on an uncertain path as it also seeks a new leader. Ex-London mayor and a leading Brexit campaigner Boris Johnson is the favourite to replace David Cameron as Prime Minister. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, world markets and currencies stumbled as the UK voted to leave the EU. World markets reacted as expected, wiping off billions of dollars as the day progressed. The pound sterling tumbled to its 30-year low and the Indian rupee too breached the 68 level mark. Here's a report.
The jitters of Brexit were felt all over the world markets, including in India, as the BSE Sensex opened over 700 points lower on Friday. By the end of the day, Indian stocks had lost 4 lakh crore rupees before the Sensex recovered slightly at 604.51 points. The rupee closed 71 paise down at 67.96 against the US dollar, its lowest level in 4 months. Gold too recorded its highest closing level since April 2014 at 30,875 rupees per 10 grams. The government, however, assured investors that the country won't suffer from any long-term impact of Brexit.
I think we have enough firepower to deal with the situation, and the firepower will be used judiciously in a manner that we maintain stability of our economy.
Yes, India is reasonably ready, at least on the market front. India is, and also on the currency front we are much better placed. We have reserves. On top of it, what we have seen in the last 1.5–2 years is that domestic investors have primarily supported and invested in the market. So our dependence on the FIIs has come down substantially.
British markets too witnessed a state of panic, with the pound crashing to a 31-year low, falling as much as 11% before recovering slightly to trade 6% lower against the US dollar. 122 billion pounds of stock value was wiped as the London Stock Exchange dropped 6% in early deals. However, the markets recovered slightly after the Bank of England's announcement to provide additional funds to support financial markets.
We are well prepared for this. Her Majesty's Treasury and the Bank of England have engaged in extensive contingency planning, and the Chancellor and I have remained in close contact, including through the night and this morning. To be clear, the Bank of England will not hesitate to take additional measures as required, as markets adjust, and as the UK economy moves forward.
Asian stocks were also hit hard as UK voted to leave the European Union. In their biggest fall since 2008, Tokyo stocks plummeted 8%, while South Korea's stock index sank 3.1% and Hong Kong's index tumbled 4.4%.
一番大きいのはやはり為替ですよね。やや今直近では過剰な動きと思える動きになっていますけれども、やはり安定した本来あるべき姿に収まることが大事で。
Heavy losses across other European markets were also reported, with the main index in Germany down almost 7%. In France, the main share index lost more than 8%. While the Italian and Spanish markets plunged more than 11%. Greece's stock market was down 15.3%, with bank shares falling 29.8%. US stocks too plunged in early trading on Friday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 2.8% in the first few minutes of trading on Friday. The Nasdaq too dropped 3.93%. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the world reacted to Brexit with caution, while the European Union itself said it was saddened by the UK's exit. Most European countries and even those outside were worried about how this would affect them.
Hiding the fact that we wanted a different outcome of yesterday's referendum. I am fully aware of how serious or even dramatic this moment is politically. And there is no way of predicting all the political consequences of this event, especially for the UK. It is a historic moment, but for sure not a moment for hysterical reactions.
The line of the European Parliament is quite clear. We are very sad about the decision of the voters in the United Kingdom, but it is a sovereign expression of the will of British voters to leave the European Union. This is a difficult moment for both sides, for the European Union as for the United Kingdom. We have now, from a legal and from a procedural point of view, to assess what are the necessary next steps.
La primera consideración sobre esta decisión que quiero transmitir es serenidad y tranquilidad. Aunque se trata de la primera vez que un Estado miembro decide abandonar la Unión, los tratados prevén un procedimiento negociado y ordenado de salida.
中方一贯从战略高度和长远角度看待和发展中英和中欧关系，支持欧洲自主选择发展道路。我们希望英欧通过相关谈判早日达成协议，一个繁荣与稳定的欧洲符合各方的利益。
정부는 이번 브렉시트 결과가 우리 경제에 야기할 수 있는 부정적 영향을 최소화하기 위해 범정부적으로 최선의 노력을 기울여 나갈 것입니다.
The impact on Australia immediately will directly from a legal point of view will be very limited because it will take some years for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union to negotiate an exit. However, we've seen already large falls on stock markets, and there will be a degree of uncertainty for some time.
Well, India is also calculating the impact of Brexit. UK's decision to leave the EU has many positive and negative effects. Let's take a look.
Even as Brexit leaves the world's fifth biggest economy facing deep uncertainty about its growth prospects and its attractiveness to investors, India is not far behind in facing the heat. At present, India is the second biggest source of FDI for Great Britain. Till now, UK was the gateway for Indian companies to sell their products to the rest of Europe under the European free market system. But now it will not be as attractive a destination for Indian FDI as before because the scope of selling products in the European market will shrink. The EU and UK divorce also means that India will now have to look to forge ties with other countries within the EU in order to access the larger European market. But it's not all bad news for India and Indians. The results mean that migration from mainland Europe will be drying up and Britain would have to accommodate migrants from other countries, which will suit India's interests. Britain is also one of the most important destinations for Indian students. Till now, British universities were forced to offer subsidized rates for citizens of the UK and EU, but now they will no longer be obliged to provide scholarships to EU citizens, freeing up funds for students from other countries.
We value our multifaceted relationship with both the United Kingdom and the European Union, and we will strive to further strengthen these ties in the years ahead.
After Brexit, the EU will also look at India as an important trading partner. It will be in EU's interest to develop India as a strong trade and strategic partner to counterbalance the United States and China. For this, Europe would be looking at the fastest growing major economy in the world and would need to quickly resolve the pending trade issues with India. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The British Prime Minister will have to invoke Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty to start the formal process of withdrawal from the EU. This is the first time in the EU's history that it will be invoked. It will begin 2 years of negotiations between the UK and the EU, but EU wants the process completed as soon as possible.
Negotiation with the European Union will need to begin under a new Prime Minister. And I think it's right that this new Prime Minister takes the decision about when to trigger Article 50 and start the formal and legal process of leaving the EU. I will attend the European Council next week to explain the decision the British people have taken and my own decision.
British Prime Minister David Cameron describing the path ahead for himself and the country. The Article 50 that he mentions is part of the Lisbon Treaty. It sets out the rules, processes and deadlines that would govern an exit from the EU. It is also the only legal way to leave the Union, although it has never before been used and so is completely untested.
For all of us, the Union is the framework for our common future. I would also like to reassure you that there will be no legal vacuum. Until the United Kingdom formally leaves the European Union, EU law will continue to apply to and within the UK. And by this I mean rights as well as obligations. All the procedures for the withdrawal of the UK from the EU are clear and set out in the treaties.
Any country wishing to withdraw must negotiate the departure terms with other member states. This can take up to 2 years with the possibility of an extension. Talks will focus on negotiating access to the single market and creating new trade deals, as well as deciding the rights of movement for EU nationals and Britons. Any agreement has to be approved by all other member states and may require ratification by national parliaments.
Over the past 2 days, I have spoken to all the EU leaders, I mean prime ministers and presidents, as well as heads of the EU institutions, about the possibility of a Brexit. Today, on behalf of the 27 leaders, I can say that we are determined to keep our unity as 27.
What the Leave campaign did not tell voters was how long this separation could actually take. EU leaders are unlikely to be very accommodating to Britain's wishes, as it might not entirely be in their political interest to concede a lot to the UK.
I will also propose to the leaders that we start a wider reflection on the future of our union. Finally, it's true that the past years have been the most difficult ones in the history of our union, but I always remember what my father used to tell me: what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
In the intervening period, some things would continue as normal. EU laws would still apply to the UK and British ministers would continue to participate in most EU business. However, they will not be party to internal EU discussions or decisions on UK's withdrawal. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Welcome to this episode of Eureka. We are at the Saffron Bowl of Kashmir.
For making 1 kg of saffron, he has to pick 1,60,000 or 2 lakh flowers. Government of India really wanted to retain this legendary crop of India because saffron is the name that India carries. Overall chromosome length of the Kashmiri saffron is 3 times more as compared to the chromosome length elsewhere reported from Italy or from Iran. The FAO Rome has already given a certification for Pampur as a globally important agriculture heritage system.
Watch Eureka with Dr. F.A. Nehvi, Chief Scientist at Saffron Research Station, Kashmir, only on Rajya Sabha TV.
Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Mehbooba Mufti's fate will be decided today as the counting of votes have begun and result of the Anantnag Assembly constituency will be declared soon. The result will determine whether she would enter the state legislature. Mehbooba Mufti, currently an MP from Anantnag Lok Sabha constituency, is locked in a three-corner contest in the by-poll with Hilal Shah of the Congress and Iftikhar Misgar of the National Conference. Elections were necessitated in Anantnag constituency due to the death of Mehbooba Mufti's father and former Chief Minister Mufti Muhammad Saeed on January 7th this year. Well, the Ministry of Home Affairs has said that it returned 14 bills passed by the Delhi Legislative Assembly this year. This includes the contentious Jan Lokpal bill. The ministry said that the Aam Aadmi Party-led Delhi government passed the bills unilaterally without following requisite procedure. Since Delhi is a union territory, bills have to be first sent to the centre. Only after approval can they be moved for legislative approval. The ministry said that none of the 14 bills had the central government's approval. Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal reacted to the report claiming that the government was avenging BJP's defeat in Delhi by returning bills passed by the Delhi Assembly.
दिल्ली विधानसभा को कोई अधिकार नहीं है, दिल्ली सरकार को कोई अधिकार नहीं है, इसका मतलब साफ है, इनकी नीयत साफ नहीं है। ये बिल्कुल आम आदमी पार्टी की सरकार इनसे बर्दाश्त नहीं हो रही। केजरीवाल जी से न जाने क्यों दहशत के अंदर हैं। हमने तो संविधान की एक-एक धारा का पालन करने के बाद इन बिलों को इनके पास भेजा है। अब इनकी नीयत साफ नहीं है तो हम उसमें कुछ नहीं कर सकते।
मैं ये कहूंगा इनको मालूम था या फिर ये अनुभवहीन है और एरोगेंट है, जिस कारण इनके सभी बिल वापस आ गए। अब ये दोबारा उसकी अप्रूवल लेंगे और उसके बाद असेंबली में लाएंगे और अप्रूवल भी उन्हीं बिल की मिलेगी जो सेंट्रल एक्ट से रिपग्नेंट नहीं करेंगे। इनके बहुत सारे बिलों में स्थिति है कि जो संसद के अधिकार के बिल हैं उनको ये असेंबली में लाना चाहते हैं, जैसे लोकपाल। तो इसलिए ये कानून का उल्लंघन करते हैं, भारत के संविधान का उल्लंघन करते हैं और जिसका खामियाजा दिल्ली की जनता को भुगतना पड़ रहा है।
केजरीवाल जी के अहम की लड़ाई और आपसी सिर फुटअव्वल ने दिल्ली के प्रशासनिक ढांचे को तार-तार करके रख दिया है। इससे केवल दिल्ली की जनता जूझ रही है। केजरीवाल जी को आरोप लगाने से फुर्सत नहीं और मोदी जी को सरकार के कार्य प्रणाली में अड़ंगे लगाने से फुर्सत नहीं। दोनों ना काम कर रहे हैं जमीन पर और ना काम होने दे रहे हैं जमीन पर।
Well, the Central Bureau of Investigation has filed 4 new charge sheets in the Vyapam scam. Charges were filed against Dinesh Tyagi, Somesh Tomar, Sushil Kumar and Varun Sharma. Tyagi is reported to have hired a man to take the written examination for police constable recruitments in Morena district of Madhya Pradesh. The CBI took over the investigation from the Madhya Pradesh police of a matter alleging cheating by impersonation in the pre-medical test conducted on July 5th, 2009. Meanwhile, key accused and mining baron Sudhir Sharma walked out of jail after 2 years after getting bail on June 22nd. More than 2,000 people have been arrested in connection with the scam where organized rackets allegedly rigged tests conducted by the Madhya Pradesh Professional Examination Board for admissions to various courses and recruitment for government jobs. Well, several parts of Rajasthan received pre-monsoon rain since Thursday, even as the IMD said conditions are becoming favourable for advancement of southwest monsoon to Delhi and other northern states in the next 3 to 4 days. Parts of Uttar Pradesh received moderate to heavy rains, leading to a rise in the water levels in major rivers. In West Bengal, heavy rain lashed 3 districts of sub-Himalayan region, with the weather forecasting more such downpour in the region, while a few areas in the Gangetic region received 1 or 2 spells of rain. Meanwhile, Bihar, where lightning claimed nearly 60 lives in the past few days, received very little rain since yesterday. Moving on to some international news now. The Sri Lankan Parliament yesterday passed the Right to Information Bill. The bill is aimed at restoring transparency and good governance in a country plagued by corruption and misrule. The new law gives citizens access to public information except personal data, national security information, financial and commercial policy decisions, intellectual property and medical reports. The law was promised by President Maithripala Sirisena last year during campaign to end Sri Lanka's long history of official secrecy. Local government institutions and NGOs getting governmental and foreign funding are included in the act. An unusually fierce tornado ravaged an eastern Chinese city, killing at least 98 people and injuring 800 others. While President Xi Jinping has called for an all-out rescue effort, meanwhile, rescuers on Friday continue to conduct search operations in areas affected by a savage storm. Here's more.
At least 98 people have been killed and over 800 injured after a violent tornado packed with hail hit eastern China. Wind speeds of up to 125 kilometers per hour battered several townships, flattening power lines and overturning cars. Rescuers are now searching through the debris for missing people. Chinese President Xi Jinping, who is currently in Uzbekistan, called for comprehensive rescue efforts and has ordered his cabinet to send a team to oversee relief efforts. Premier Li Keqiang also instructed authorities to ramp up search and rescue work as well as medical treatment for the injured.
截至24日8点，灾害已造成98人遇难，医院收治伤员846人，富临县倒塌损害房屋8004户。
The summer often brings extreme weather to China. Severe floods in the south killed at least 22 people and left 20 missing earlier this week. The lack of a warning system and underground bunkers, as well as population density, may have contributed to the heavy casualties. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, here's a roundup of the other international news in our World Wrap. Kyrgyzstan welcomed China to actively participate in infrastructure construction during a meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping on the sidelines of the ongoing Shanghai Cooperation Summit. Chinese President said that both the countries support each other on various grounds and aims to work on various projects such as agriculture, railways, thermal power plants so as to help Kyrgyz people as soon as possible. US Democratic candidate Bernie Sanders said that he will vote for presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. He said he will do anything to beat Donald Trump. Sanders is yet to endorse Clinton and while keeping his own election campaign alive. At least 6 people were reported injured during a clash in parts of the Bolivian town when unionists and textile workers entered the second day of a 48-hour strike. Protests are being held against President Evo Morales after the closure of the country's largest state-run textile company. And now to some sports news. After a 2-day break and a political sea storm, of course, lots going to happen in the Euro Cup 2016, which begins its knockout stages today. In the first game of the day, Wales will take on Northern Ireland in a historic meeting. Both teams are making a bid to reach their first European Championship quarter-final. Wales finished above England to win Group B, with Northern Ireland qualifying from Group C as one of the best third-place teams. Meanwhile, in another encounter, Croatia will be focusing on containing Cristiano Ronaldo as well as bidding to score a first-ever goal against Portugal when they meet later in the day. Croatia beat holder Spain to win Group D, and their reward is a tough game against a Portuguese side that have 3 times World Player of the Year Ronaldo in their ranks. The last game of the day will see Poland facing a buoyant Switzerland. The Swiss are confident that they can beat the Poles to qualify for the European Championship last 8 after reaching the tournament's knockout stages for the first time. The match will feature sides who stifle their group stage opponents in midfield and kept things tight at the back, with the Swiss conceding only 1 goal and Poland none. That's it on this bulletin. Have a good day.